Ladies and gentlemen, one thing is clear. The birthright to citizenship has been scrapped, not just for illegal immigrants. According to the executive order signed by Donald Trump, let me explain who is going to be affected. Well, the executive order speaks of two situations or two scenarios. One, if mother is in the US unlawfully and father is not a citizen or a lawful permanent resident either. Scenario B states mother is in the United States lawfully but temporarily. Example, on student visa or a tourist visa, and father is neither a citizen nor a lawful permanent resident. In both these scenarios, if the couples give birth to children in the United States, the children will not be any more deemed US citizens automatically, according to the decree or the executive order by Donald Trump. And this, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, is likely to also have a direct bearing on children of H-1B visa holders who are not green card holders. Neither are their children US citizens by any virtue. And the impact is likely to be seen in aspects, look at this, impact on H-1B visa holders as well. Their children, for that matter, in-state tuition, scholarships, federal aid, which, by the way, can have direct bearing on children's college dreams, medical aid and health insurance as well, and of course, voting rights. To give you a sense of the numbers, there are over 50 lakh people of Indian origin in America, a category that includes both Indian Americans and Indians who continue to have Indian citizenship. But what should Indians make of this? And remember, there are at least 22 states in the United States that are opposing what Donald Trump has done, are suing it, in a land where Martin Luther King Jr. said, "I have a dream." Is Donald Trump's turnaround on birthright citizenship inclusion or exclusion? As Trump says, we will not look at color, race. Is this solely about merit? I'm being joined at this point by David Sofair, who's a Republican strategist, Raymond Vickery, who's a senior associate Center for Strategic and International Studies, as well as former assistant for Secretary of Commerce. Also, Atul Agarwal, who's a US who's an advocate, who's part of an advocacy group on visas and immigrations. Professor Madhav Nalapat, who's a geopolitics expert, as well as Ray Locker, who's a journalist and author. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining me. Well, first, let me straight at this point go to you, Atul Agarwal. Atul Agarwal, for somebody who lives in the United States, what do you make out of what's happened just now? How are Indians likely to be impacted? What's the conversations? How are Indians looking at this? Because, as I said earlier, it's very clear now. This is not only going to be implemented for illegal immigrants. This is across board.
Thank you for having me, first of all. I think, and bringing this topic to light, actually, a lot of people don't understand how complicated the US immigration system is until they move there, until they live there. Now, what is happening is a lot of the talent, India's talent, has gone to the US, and slowly they are realizing that they don't have a clear pathway to green card. What Trump has said is the people with this executive order, the people who are even on work visas, which means F1, H1B, or J1 visa, these people are PhDs. What it has said is, like, if they have kids in America, the kids would not have US citizenship by birth. And imagine like anyone who is like thinking about going to US and be like, okay, I'm going to live there for a few years, then have a family and raise my family there after 5 years, 10 years. Indian immigrants have been waiting in that backlog for like up to 100 years. So let's say someone goes at an age of 25, just like a university graduate from IIT, and be like, okay, I want to start a life in the US. Let's say 5 years down the line, they're like, I want to get married. And then they're still work in the backlog there, which is long, like 100 plus years. And let's say they want to have family in like 30s or 40s, then their kids would not have the US citizenship. So if you think about it, they are themselves waiting in this 100 plus years of line for a green card. And then their kids would be waiting in the same line of 100 plus years, which means Indians don't really have a pathway to a green card in the US. And that just concerns the whole community who is all about merit and looking at America as a land of opportunities, which respects people, irrespective of their color of skin. And just like how you mentioned about Martin Luther King, and how Martin Luther King has always advocated for life on based on your character. And here we are seeing where character is not getting respected. Country of birth is already causing a lot of problem. And now even with this like removal of birthright citizenship for legal immigrants, people who are working on coming on work visa, this is going to become a bigger challenge.
Professor Nalapat, would you agree with what Atul Agarwal is saying? I'm asking you this question essentially for two reasons. One, I made references to Martin Luther King Jr. and his "I Have a Dream" is iconic. It's quoted across the globe for that matter. Donald Trump today said, we will not look, we will turn a blind eye to race or color. But is this policy going to impact merit as well?
Look, the fact is Donald Trump gave a lot of campaign promises, and he's going to say, okay, he's made those campaign promises. He's kept them in his executive orders. I don't believe that this particular set of orders is going to pass muster in the U.S. justice system. The 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution is very clear. It was passed as way back in 1868 after the Civil War to give equal rights to all people who are U.S. citizens. And that is that children, born or naturalized. Whether you're born or whether you're naturalized, it should not make any difference to your citizenship. The rights are enumerated in that particular amendment. There are specifications. For example, children of diplomats are excluded. Children of hostile nations by custom has been excluded. And children who are basically in the very rare circumstance being born on an aircraft or on ship belonging to a U.S. company, although technically in U.S. Territory, it's not U.S. territory. You've got to be in U.S. territory, period. Now, Shreya, quite frankly, if Trump is serious about this, he's going to lose the 2026 midterm election pretty badly to the Democrats. Let's be very clear about that. Not only Indian Americans, but a lot of Hispanic Americans are going to vote against him, and they're going to get the Democrats back in the U.S. Congress, whether in the House or the Senate or both, very likely both. So quite frankly, these are highly unpopular orders in a large section of the population in America. And as far as India is concerned, we have gone all the way with Donald Trump. We have said very clearly we will accept any illegal immigrant sent over, illegal immigrant. We have said very clearly that we have blocked the BRICS currency. I think we said that more than 2 years ago. And and so there's no question of BRICS currency replacing the dollar. Well, the fact of the matter is this particular gesture is going to be regarded as a hostile and unfriendly gesture by India and by several other countries across the world, especially in the global south. And if Trump wants to sacrifice the global south to China in this particular competition, this is one of the best ways of doing it. But frankly, in my view, this is posturing for the sake of, pleasing his MAGA base, his ultra MAGA base. And frankly, I think he himself knows that a lot of this is going to drop by the wayside where the court system is concerned. And certainly any kind of prohibition on citizenship by birth to a U.S. In the territory of the United States, I think that is, except for the exceptions I mentioned, diplomats and hostile nations and vessels at sea, it's going to be impossible to pass through the court system. And by 2022, it's going to be completely impossible if, frankly, these kind of measures are multiplied by Donald Trump. He's taking away a lot of his base, potential and actual, and it's political suicide and harakiri for him. Thank you.
David Sofair, let me just get you in. You just heard Professor Nalapat in very, very strong words. He said this is nothing short of political suicide or harakiri for that matter. In fact, there are others, and including Professor Nalapat, as well as others who have spoken about how this is just pure posturing. And if that is what it is, the kind of opposition that even the United States is seeing, 22 states have gone ahead to sue Donald Trump, David Sofair. Can you, as a Republican strategist, even justify what Donald Trump has stated, has signed?
Well, again, it's an executive order, so I think that there will be significant hurdles going forward to get all those points across. Now, with Trump, when he says it's 100 points, right, we have to say that, again, it's a negotiation tactic. I mean, I feel that America has been very generous with their immigration system and policy, especially when it comes to legal immigration. So, there could be significant challenges with, in regards to the birthright citizenship and Amendment 14 and all of that. But so what I will say is that America has a huge illegal immigration problem as well. So, then the question becomes, should those illegal immigrants and those criminals that are here illegally in the country, should their kids then have the birthright? I mean, that's the argument. So I think we've come a long way for that. So that's the discussion that we're having now. So
David Sofair, David Sofair, here's the question. No. I understand your point of view, but allow me, I do not interrupt my guests usually.
No, please.
But just give me a minute to ask this question to you, because you are talking about illegal immigrants and nobody questions the right of a country to protect themselves from illegal immigrants. Nobody has the right to question that. But with the executive order that has been signed, can you say this is only going to protect the United States from illegal immigrants?
Well, I just think that it'll be a very uphill battle for it to actually go through in the courts. So, with the 22 states suing and all of that, it's going to be a uphill battle and a real long shot for this actual piece of legislation to get through.
Raymond Vickery, do you want to come in at this point? You just heard David Sofair, and David Sofair is essentially saying this is a battle against illegal immigrants. Here's my question. Is this battle done wrong?
Yeah.
I believe you've addressed this a question to me, and thanks for having me. I think that this action is one of the most outrageous attacks on the rule of law in the United States and really around the world that I've ever heard of. I have practiced law for about 30 years, and it has always been accepted that the Constitution of the country overrides statute, and it certainly cannot be changed by executive order. And yet, Trump purports to do this. People in India who value the rule of law ought to be as upset about this as many of us are here in the United States. I want to say that the reason for birthright citizenship is not just that we had slavery in this country and we wanted to overturn that by amending it and making it clear that people born in the U.S. were citizens, but it's to overcome a pre-Civil War decision called the Dred Scott decision, which was against African Americans and against Black people regardless, said they could not be citizens of the United States. That was a terrible, terrible legacy which had to be overcome by not only the blood of the Civil War, but the 14th Amendment. So for anybody to try to overturn that and take us back is unconscionable. Now, in regard to U.S.-India relations, of course, it has very grave consequences. What are you talking about here? You're talking about families whose children are citizens, but whose parents are not? Are you going to separate the families? What happens in regard to passports in terms of determining who is a citizen and who is not? And what happens in the future? Trump says, well, this doesn't have anything to do with race or religion. Well, why not? If a president can issue an executive order overturning a portion of the Constitution, why not just make it white supremacist, as some would like to say it? That was the situation in the United States prior to the 14th Amendment and prior to adopting this. So it seems to me that it's really a part of the whole anti-foreigner component of MAGA supporters, and designed to give them red meat. But to say that you just don't take it seriously, it seems to me that the United States and indeed the world is finding out that you don't just take Donald Trump seriously when he says these outrageous things, but you take him literally, because time and time again he has tried to push what he says into U.S. law. Now, hopefully the courts will stand up against it, but that is by no means a foregone conclusion, because we have examples of the Trump majority on the Supreme Court upholding the position that there is immunity for criminal acts. So we're in for a rough
David, so fair, some very strong words, very strong arguments, but just for the right of a debate, let me just get in Raymond Vickery again. Raymond Vickery, I'll come to you for a minute because I have to go to the other panelists as well. Raymond Vickery, very, very strong arguments, not just in the United States, also outside of the United States. Do you have a response to what, David Sofair, do you have a response to what Raymond Vickery just said?
Yes, well, I mean, whilst I agree with his position on Dred Scott and the amendment as well, I mean, it is part of our constitution here. So yes, I mean, I agree with these points, but let's not broad brush our immigration crisis and the crisis at the border, which we've inherited, which the Democrats have created. They've created so much violence, so much discourse. So we need to rebuild in a different way. So, while I might not agree with every single point on the immigration landscape, and I don't agree with every single point of Trump's immigration landscape. I just want to be clear here on some of those points as well. So, I'm kind of on the same page, but at the end of the day...
David Sofair, this is hard. This is hard because, quite honestly, while you're not justifying the entire gamut of the executive order, you are bringing the whole argument down to illegal immigrants, and nobody takes it away from United States to guard oneself, a country, from illegal immigrants by all means. But really, the debate has moved far beyond that, considering it's among the first lot of executive orders that have been signed in by Donald Trump. Let me just get him Ray Locker at this point. Ray Locker, good evening. Thank you for your patience. Very quick question to you. There's this whole birth tourism that has been at the focus of this crackdown. Donald Trump has repeatedly spoken that there needs to be an end to birth tourism. Now, can you give us a picture? Can you give us a sense of when it comes to India, when it comes to the United States, when we talk about birth tourism, how much of this, what's the extent of this for a crackdown of this extent?
Well, I don't know the exact numbers on alleged birth tourism. I think it's a red herring. Sure, there are some people who come here, they're pregnant, they overstay their visas, they give birth, lo and behold, they now are a parent to a U.S. citizen. But that's not what this is all about. This is a racist executive order. And I tell you, if we had a bunch of H-1B visa holders from Norway, we would not be seeing this problem. And Trump, during his first term, said, why don't we get more immigrants from Norway? Well, guess what? They like it there. They don't want to come to the United States, probably because we do stuff like this. This thing has no chance of becoming law, except for what Raymond Vickery said, if the Supreme Court, in its infinite wisdom, decides to verify it. The 14th Amendment prohibits this. It's passed in statute. A president can't sign an executive order and wipe out parts of the Constitution as much as he'd like to think so. And I've been on many shows in India talking with Indians
You
and
may
Indian
say that
Americans. Oh,
it's
Trump
going to
is
be
great.
hard to wipe out the constitution, Ray Locker. If that's what
Yeah.
you're saying, what about the conscience of a country? Because it may or may not get a roadblock in the Supreme Court. That's for us to see how this progresses. But when it comes to the identity of the United States, when it comes to the conscience of the United States, is it now established? Would you, as somebody who lives in the United States, who's an American citizen, would you see this as the America that the world knows as the home of Martin Luther King Jr., or is this a totally different United States?
Well, with the Trump administration, it's a totally different United States. It's not the United States I live in and the people that I know. Everybody I associate with thinks this is a terrible idea. Yes, there have been problems with illegal immigration, and they have been dealt with, and we're dealing with them. But this goes far beyond that. I mean, this goes to people who come here to make a better life and to learn, and the kind of people we want in this country, right? They're learning, their sciences, mathematics. They bring a lot of value here. They decide to stay. They go through the green card, the citizenship process. We want those people here because we need them. And they make life a whole hell of a lot better and more interesting than this white bread existence that Donald Trump seems to harken back to, where everything was so great in the 1950s. Well, guess what? It wasn't. And, this thing hopefully has no chance of going forward. But it gives you an idea of what he and his people are thinking about and what they want to see. And I agree with the professor. This is something that's going to be rejected in 2 years.
Okay, if I can just get in David Sofair again. David Sofair, you just heard the panelists speak. You just heard Ray Locker speak. Now, Ray Locker has not minced his words again. Ray Locker has called this racist. David Sofair, would you see this as racist?
Well, at the end of the day, it's a immigration ban. So again, it's not targeting one group. So how can you call it racist? It's a blanket ban.
Okay. Ray Locker.
I mean, that's a very strange argument by David, frankly. I wonder if he's got any relation to Abraham Sofair during the Kennedy assassination. I remember that name. But the fact of the matter is that it is racist in effect because of the proportion of people. In H-1B, for example, let's say, as far as universities are concerned, you deny students certain rights, you deny H-1B visa certain rights, you're crippling the tech industry. Is Trump going to make sure that people who have not got through high school, which is the kind of voter base that he's appealing to with this kind of step, are going to work in technology companies, are going to study in universities or teach in universities or practice medicine in hospitals? I don't know if he's ever been to a hospital, or a university or a school, except a long time ago. But if he goes there, there's so many Indians. They are net huge contributors to the American exchequer.
Yes,
huge contributors,
I
Shreya.
agree.
The largest of any ethnic group. And you're just cutting yourself off, basically, because of that.
Yeah, I agree with those points as well. I really don't see this going through. So that's really how I see it. I don't see this going through. I don't think it's going to go through the Supreme Court. And we really value.
If you don't see this go through the Supreme Court, how has Donald Trump seen this go through Supreme Court? And if Donald Trump has not seen this go through Supreme Court, then what Professor Nalapat said earlier about this being pure posturing holds true.
Well, that's what I was saying. I was saying when it comes to Trump's negotiation tactics, when he says 100, the actual price could be at 20, right? So America does have a very huge immigration problem now, and 87% of Americans agree on the same thing, that we need to deport illegal aliens and all of that, and illegal migrants. So, this is a huge election topic. So, again, this is not against Indian Americans or Indian immigrants who have made a huge contribution to our society. And in fact, they have done even better than white Americans. And if you look at Trump's cabinet, he has many Indians in his cabinet, which is a good thing. And these are invaluable contributions to American society and democracy.
Well, it's
So
interesting of what you say in the light of the facts of how long it takes to get a citizenship there, and then couple it with what seems to be now the new rules and the executive orders. But allow me to just go quickly to Atal Agrawal. Atal Agrawal, would you just weigh in? I want you to spend a few minutes on the fact that a lot of people who have argued against Donald Trump's move, particularly even states that have sued Donald Trump, 22 in the United States, are now questioning about how this entire executive order is going to be a violation of human rights. In the Indian context, in the Indian American context in the United States, could you explain this to us in 2-3 possibilities, in 2-3 points?
Yeah, definitely. I think when I see the India diaspora that actually ends up moving to the US, they are all looking for equal opportunity for themselves, their future, and looking at America as a country which promotes merit. And they are all thinking of like these H-1B visa people who are going or like O1 or going for studies. This is all pro-merit approach of America. But when you see there are people who are already in the backlog, 1 million people from India, it's kind of an indentured servitude of Indians because they don't have rights to be out of their current employer. They're basically stuck to their job for their lifetime. And they see okay, well, they still have a future because they can have kids in the next 5-10 years and their kids can have a better life. So there is a lot of hope that goes with that. But now what we are seeing is even the whole thinking about pro-merit, which does not exist on H-1B, Indians are getting discriminated and Indians are waiting. There are a million of them which are actually who came on merit are still not having a pathway for a green card. Even their kids do not have a pathway for a better quality life. And I think that's going to change a lot of things. And I'm already seeing India is making moves and people are coming back. A lot of NRIs are coming back to India. They are seeing the development happening in India and they are seeing a great light in India. And I think this is going to strengthen India further, which is also amazing. But it's sad to see what is happening in America where now racism is again taking place and which used to be a country of opportunity and a better life.
Professor Madhav Nalapat, so essentially, it's important to understand birthright citizenship, H-1B visas, the right to work in the United States, and the right to be a citizen in the United States are not distinct aspects. They are very clearly interlinked and definitely affects the aspirations of anybody in the United States. So is this officially now Namaste America, not anymore?
Well, not really, Shreya, because we are talking about remember, so many years after 1868, 100 years actually, there were no equal rights in the United States. States were allowed to pass the Dred Scott kind of laws, worse laws, and they passed Jim Crow laws and discriminated against those who were basically African American. And Martin Luther King fought that discrimination. He had a dream. It was not in 1867 that he had that dream. He had that dream 100 years later that America was still not free. And if the Supreme Court goes back to what it was before the era of Martin Luther King, quite frankly, those justices are not going to be welcome anywhere in the world, including, I think, in large parts of the United States. So, Shreya, quite frankly, this is a move that may please a small number of people, but it antagonizes a lot of people and a lot of countries that Donald Trump actually needs if he's serious about his many, many promises regarding dealing with the China threat. If he's serious about that, this is not the way to go about it, unless, of course, it's pure posturing. Quite frankly, Shreya, it's a politically unwise move. And I think Trump, frankly, I don't know, for whatever reason, he signed a blizzard of orders. And when you sign a blizzard of orders, a lot of them are wrong. And this is an insult to the memory of Martin Luther King. These executive orders, which go against the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, are an insult to the memory of Martin Luther King and a throwback to what the United States was until the Civil Rights Act were passed by Lyndon Johnson in the United States. He's trying to reverse what Lyndon Johnson did. And he's trying to go back to what the southern states who are basically Confederate did, even after the Supreme Court said you have to have then the 14th Amendment was passed. So I'd like to say, if the Supreme Court of the United States affirms this kind of an illegal, outrageous act, then that Supreme Court, quite frankly, has no right to respect anywhere in the world, including in the United States. Thank you, Shreya, for giving me this chance.
Ray Locker, just a last question, Ray Locker here. Could you give us a timeline? Is there a sense? I mean, the executive order says it's going to take 30 days to be implemented, but if it's about 30 days to be implemented, there's also a battle that's going to be fought in Supreme Court. So what does it look like on the ground before this becomes a reality? How long really, evidently, could this mean?
Well, it's not going to take effect in 30 days. Typically what happens is there's a lawsuit that freezes the clock and then goes through the court process. We saw in 2017 with the so-called Muslim ban, it took a little more than a year before that made its way through the Supreme Court and they ruled in favor of the Muslim ban, which had been tweaked somewhat where it wasn't purely a Muslim ban. So we're going to see this thing go into a series of courts. I saw a lawsuit, I think it was filed in New Hampshire. It'll go there. It'll be appealed to the Appeals Circuit Appeals Court, then maybe to D.C. Court of Appeals, then to the Supreme Court. So it's going to take months. So it's not going to take effect anytime soon, if ever.
Okay. But before the 2026 mid-elections?
We'll probably have a settlement by then, and we'll see what happens. And, you know, if somehow the court rules in favor of this thing, then it's going to be a major issue. And you'll see a lot of Indian Americans who were celebrating 2 months ago when Trump got elected start to reconsider what they were so happy about.
Right. Very quickly, last question, Raymond Vickery. Raymond Vickery, so if you're looking at a 2026 elections, midterm elections for that matter, how is this going to even impact India-US relations with what Trump is doing now? I'm asking this question in particular because let's look at the meeting that happened with Indian Foreign Affairs Minister, External Affairs Minister, that's S. Jaishankar. So US clearly had India as its priority. But when you look at actions such as this, how are Democrats likely to take on the Republic on it? What I'm trying to understand is how much are these 11 million Indian diaspora or Indian American diaspora, how much of it is at the heart of politics in the United States?
Well, I think it's very much at the heart of politics in the United States. Indian Americans have been very much involved in greater and greater numbers. There was a little bit of a shift from probably 2/3, 1/3 to maybe 60-40 in Trump, in the Trump election. And that will be, it seems to me, completely reversed. And in fact, Indian Americans will play an even greater role, not just in terms of the numbers, but in terms of contributions. This is taking an axe to the roots of democracy. You cannot have a system in which an executive order overturns a constitution. That is true whether it's in the United States, India, or any other great democracy. And so I think that people who, as was said, maybe have rejoiced about Trump will take an immediate and definite new look at it, and they'll not go along with this.
All right. Thank you very much, all of our panelists. Some very, very important perspectives. Of course, this is going to be a long-drawn battle, but the impact is evident, and a lot of people are looking at it with caution. As we've said this very clearly, the birthright to citizenship is not any different or distinct or unconnected from what is the right to work, live, and carry on with the life in the United States. David Sofair, Raymond Vickery, Atal Agarwal, Professor Madhav Nalapat, as well as Ray Locker, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Well, it's time for a very short break. On the other side, news and updates.